What's going on, guys? It's Corbin here from acousticworld.net, coming at you with a quick answer to a question I see all over the place on the internet and in real life, and something I always thought about back when I own a made in Mexico Fender Strat, although it's back in my home state of Pennsylvania right now, so I haven't played it in a little bit. But, a question that comes up a lot is whether you should oil a maple fretboard. So the two most popular type of fretboard woods by far are rosewood and maple. There's also like ebony, stuff like that, but it's a little less common. So the rosewood fretboards are almost always, you should oil them somewhat regularly, although it's probably a good rule of thumb is you need to do it less often than you think. But when it comes to maple fretboards, there's a little bit of confusion. And this is largely because the maple fretboards will come into different broad types. So there's finished maple fretboards and there's unfinished maple fretboards. And whether it's finished or not, you can usually tell pretty easily. There will be kind of a lacquer or a glossy finish on the fretboard. So, in the case of Fender Strats and Telecasters, those are almost always finished. And again, they'll have that glossy finish, for lack of a better word, on top of the actual wood. So if you see that, it usually means, the finished maple fretboards, I would not oil. And that's, the general advice is you don't need to oil those because that finish is on there, it kind of seals in the moisture or state of the wood. Whereas if you're using an unfinished fretboard, like rosewood almost always is, or it's a little bit less common to have an unfinished maple fretboard, but they are out there. In that case, when there isn't that gloss permanently on the fretboard, it means the wood is exposed to outside conditions. So the sweat from your hands, the humidity in the air, all of that stuff, dust and dirt and whatever, can kind of seep into the fretboard, and it's a lot easier for the wood to actually get dried out. So the oil is to help re-moisturize, that wood. So basic rule of thumb, if your maple fretboard is finished, I wouldn't oil it. If you want, you can use just barely any oil at all just to help kind of clean it and get that grime off of there. Sometimes that helps just, with the cleaning, even though it's not necessarily going to rehydrate the wood again because the wood is finished. So that's what I would say. And then if the maple fretboard is unfinished, then it makes a lot more sense to oil it. But even then, most people oil their fretboards too much. So I'd use just a little bit of oil, very, very rarely, probably once or twice a year is a good metric. And, this varies a lot depending on who you talk to too. So there are some people who don't oil their fretboards at all. They just use a little bit of water to get the grime off of it. And they say that re-moisturizes it. So other people like 000 steel wool, so the finest steel wool you can get. Again, this is important. Do not get the heavy steel wool because it can scratch the wood. I don't use sandpaper for that reason too, although there are some people who like really, really fine sandpaper. But, you can do those to help get the grime and dirt off of the fretboard too if you are lazy as hell like I am and you change your strings 2 or 3 times a year. But pro tip, if you use Elixir strings like I recommend all over the place, you might find that you only need 2 or 3 string changes a year at most, which is what I personally find. So I hope that was helpful, you guys. Drop me a comment if you have any questions. Like and subscribe. Go to acousticworld.net/songs to download chords, tabs, video lessons for 100 of the best songs to learn on guitar. Or I'll have links to all that in the description as always. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.